My name is Sophia, and my childhood was filled with the kind of privilege most people only dream about. Our house was something straight out of a magazine: spacious rooms, manicured lawn, and a pool that hosted countless summer parties. My father's business success made it all possible, and he never let us forget it. "Sophia, honey, remember that everything we have comes from hard work," my dad would say, his voice carrying that familiar mix of pride and authority. I'd nod, trying to absorb the lesson, even though at that age, I was more interested in playing with my cousin Chloe than understanding the value of money. Ah, Chloe. She was practically my sister, even though technically she was my cousin. Just a year younger than me, she was the daughter of my father's younger brother, Uncle Mark. Our families were inseparable, though the contrast in our living situations was hard to miss. "Your uncle's family needs our support," my mom would explain whenever I noticed Dad helping them out financially. "Family takes care of family." She was always the diplomatic one, smoothing over any awkward moments when Uncle Mark would accept another check from Dad. Chloe and I shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. We'd spend hours in my room, planning our futures. "We'll go to college together," Chloe would say, lying on my bed and staring at the ceiling. "And then we'll live in apartments next to each other, and our kids will be best friends too." When high school graduation approached, true to form, my father announced he'd pay for both our college educations. Mom stood beside him, beaming with pride as he made the announcement at our joint graduation party. "Both my girls deserve the best education possible," he declared, putting an arm around each of us. I remember how Chloe's eyes welled up with tears of gratitude, while I just smiled, taking it for granted. Looking back now, I should have noticed the signs. But back then, I was just happy to have my cousin/sister by my side as we packed our bags for college. We were going to take on the world together, two peas in a pod, never imagining that a wedding gift would eventually unravel everything we thought we knew about our perfect family. "This is going to be amazing," Chloe squealed as we decorated our dorm rooms, located conveniently across the hall from each other. "Nothing can ever come between us, right, Sophia?" "Nothing," I promised, meaning it with all my heart. God, how naive we were. How naive I was. But that's the thing about perfect families: sometimes they're perfect only because we choose not to look too closely at the cracks in the foundation. College flew by faster than I expected. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage to receive my diploma, my family cheering from the audience. I felt on top of the world. Armed with my degree, I quickly landed a job at a marketing firm. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Well, almost everything. "Dad, I've been thinking about getting my own place," I brought up one evening over dinner. I'd been browsing apartment listings online, dreaming of having my own space. "The rental market is crazy right now, and with a down payment." "Sophia," he cut me off, putting down his fork. "You're an independent woman now. You have a good job. It's time for you to earn your own living. Your mother and I gave you a great education, but now it's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet." Mom just sat there, nodding in agreement. I felt like I'd been slapped. So that's how I ended up in a tiny one-bedroom apartment, watching my savings grow at a painfully slow rate while half my paycheck went to rent. But I was determined to prove I could do it on my own. A year later, Chloe graduated. We celebrated at her favorite restaurant, and that's when she dropped her bombshell. "Jake proposed," she squealed, flashing a diamond ring. "We're getting married in 4 months." 4 months flew by in a whirlwind of wedding preparations. I threw myself into my maid of honor duties, helping Chloe pick out everything from her dress to the table settings. Despite my own housing struggles, I was genuinely happy for her. The wedding day arrived, and everything was perfect. The ceremony was beautiful, the reception elegant. I watched Chloe dance with Jake, both of them glowing with happiness. Then my father stood up to make his speech. "Chloe," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been like a daughter to me all these years. Watching you grow up alongside Sophia has been one of life's greatest joys." I smiled, sipping my champagne. Standard wedding speech stuff. But then, That's why, he continued, pulling out an envelope, I want to give you something special. Something to start your new life together. He paused for dramatic effect. The keys to your very own apartment. The glass nearly slipped from my hand. The room erupted in gasps and applause. Uncle Mark and Aunt Sarah were crying. Chloe rushed to hug my father, sobbing thank yous into his shoulder. You deserve this, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. I love you like my own daughter. I sat there, frozen, as relatives crowded around Chloe and Jake, congratulating them on their incredible gift. My mind was spinning. The same father who told me to stand on my own 2 feet had just handed my cousin an apartment. I gripped my champagne glass so hard I thought it might shatter. But I kept smiling. Kept playing my part. This was Chloe's day, after all. I wouldn't make a scene. I waited exactly 3 days after the wedding before I showed up at my parents' house. My hands were shaking as I rang the doorbell, but my voice was steady when Dad opened the door. We need to talk, I said, walking past him into the familiar living room where I'd spent so many happy moments. What's on your mind, Sophia? He settled into his favorite armchair, looking perfectly calm, as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb on my life. Really? You're going to pretend you don't know? I stayed standing, too agitated to sit. You told me to earn my own living, to stand on my own feet. But you just handed Chloe an apartment like it was nothing. Want to explain that? Dad sighed, like I was being unreasonable. It's different with Chloe. She doesn't have the same opportunities you do. Different how? We went to the same college, got the same education, which you paid for, by the way. She comes from a poor family, Sophia. Jake's family isn't well off either. Your uncle can't afford to help them get started in life. He leaned forward. At today's prices, they'd never be able to save enough for their own place. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, and I can? Half the country rents, Dad. They could have done what I'm doing, work, save, rent an apartment like normal people. You're being mercantile, he snapped, his calm facade cracking. This isn't about you. This is my money, and I decide how to spend it. I help your uncle's family, because they need it. Mercantile? My voice rose. This isn't about money, it's about fairness. How do you think it feels to watch you treat your niece better than your own daughter? That's enough. Mom burst into the room. I hadn't even realized she was home. How dare you question your father's decisions? You have no right to tell him how to spend his money. Oh, so you're okay with this? I turned to her. Your husband giving another woman's daughter an apartment while telling his own to struggle? Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. Mom's face was red with anger. Your father has provided everything for you, and this is how you repay him. With jealousy and demands? Jealousy? I was practically shouting now. You think this is about jealousy? This is about respect. About treating your own child with the same consideration you show to others. Get out, Dad's voice was cold. Until you can appreciate everything we've done for you, and apologize for this behavior, get out of my house. Gladly, I grabbed my purse. And don't worry about doing anything else for me. I wouldn't want your charity. My eyes were burning with angry tears as I got into my car. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about the double standard, about watching my father bend over backward for Chloe while telling me to toughen up. 5 years can change a lot of things. In my case, they changed almost everything. I built my career, rising through the ranks at my marketing firm to become a senior account manager. I saved money diligently, though nowhere near enough for a down payment in this insane market, and most importantly, I found Michael. He walked into my life during a client meeting. He was the creative director we were partnering with, and something just clicked. The moment he proposed, on a random Tuesday evening while we were cooking dinner together, I knew I'd finally found someone who truly put me first. The wedding planning started immediately. Our date was set for early summer, and I threw myself into it with the same determination I brought to everything else in my life. The venue was booked, the dress was chosen, and then came the hardest part, the guest list. I spent hours at my kitchen table, staring at names and relationships, though it wasn't hard to decide who wouldn't be on it. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Chloe in 5 years, not since Chloe's nasty message on Facebook. "You're just jealous, because I have a husband and an apartment while you have neither. Grow up, Sophia. Maybe if you weren't so entitled, you'd have both by now. But I guess some people just can't handle seeing others succeed." I'd blocked her after that. It was easier that way, cleaner. I built a new life, surrounded myself with people who valued me, and tried to forget about the family that had made me feel like a second-class daughter. But word travels fast in families, even broken ones. I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing floral arrangements and debating between roses and peonies, when my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen, the first time in 5 years. My heart jumped into my throat, and my hand shook as I answered. "Sophia," his voice sounded older somehow, more tired. "I hear congratulations are in order." "Who told you?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Does it matter? Why didn't you invite me to your wedding?" He paused, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. "I'm your father. I should be the one walking you down the aisle." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Really? Now you want to play the father card?" "Sophia. Actually, I'm curious," I cut him off, feeling reckless. Something about hearing his voice had unleashed all the emotions I'd kept carefully contained for 5 years. "Will you be giving me an apartment as a wedding gift? You know, like you did for Chloe?" The silence on the other end stretched out so long I thought he'd hung up. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Look, sweetheart, business hasn't been great lately. I can give you $5,000 for the wedding. That's a generous gift. You should be grateful." $5,000. After giving Chloe a whole apartment. I felt that old familiar burn of indignation rising in my throat. Some things, it seemed, never changed. "Thanks for your generosity, Dad," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "But keep your money, I don't need it." The line went dead before he could respond. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling slightly, wondering if that 5-year silence had been better than this reminder of why I'd cut contact in the first place. The notification popped up on my phone the next morning. "Robert Anderson has shared a post." My father rarely posted on social media, so seeing his name alone made my stomach clench. When I opened it, my hands started shaking. "I never thought I'd have to write something like this about my own daughter," the post began. "But Sophia has shown her true colors. She's demanding an apartment as a wedding gift, threatening not to invite me to her wedding unless I comply. The selfishness and mercenary attitude she's displaying breaks my heart. What happened to the daughter I raised?" The comments started rolling in immediately. "Aunt Linda, how ungrateful can she be? Cousin James, some people never appreciate what they have." Even people I barely knew were weighing in. "You can't demand gifts like that. What kind of daughter blackmails her own father?" My fingers flew across the keyboard before I could stop myself. "A matter of principle? You gave my cousin an apartment for her wedding. Your own daughter deserves the same consideration, or at least an explanation for the difference in treatment." But the comments kept coming, each one more judgmental than the last. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type, but something had snapped inside me. I opened a new post and started writing. "Let me tell you all a story that's been bothering me for years," I began. "It's about a father who has always treated his niece better than his own daughter. Let me list the ways. Every birthday, Chloe got lavish parties, while mine were simple family gatherings. When we went on family trips abroad, Dad always took Chloe shopping separately, buying her extras I never got. Her pocket money was consistently double mine. Dad paid for her education, which I appreciate he did for both of us. He gave her an apartment as a wedding gift, while telling me to stand on my own feet. At Chloe's wedding, she had her first dance with my father instead of her own. And you know what? The more I think about it, the more suspicious this whole situation seems. I wouldn't even be surprised if it turned out Chloe was actually my father's daughter. I hit post before I could second guess myself. The words stared back at me from the screen. A nuclear bomb dropped into the middle of our family's carefully maintained facade. There would be no taking it back now. The aftermath of my post was nuclear. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with calls and messages from every corner of the family. Some relatives immediately announced they wouldn't be attending my wedding. Mom called first, her voice shrill with anger. "How could you? Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? Your father is devastated. We raised you better than this." Dad's call came next, a stream of rage and accusations about how I was destroying the family name. "You're dead to me," he spat before hanging up. Aunt Sarah's call was particularly venomous. "You vindictive little bitch," she hissed. "How dare you suggest? You're just jealous of my daughter's happiness." Then came Chloe's message: "Congratulations on proving what a hysterical, paranoid person you've become. I feel sorry for your fiancé. He's marrying a delusional woman who invents 6 stories about her own family because she can't handle not being the center of attention. Don't worry about blocking me, I'll do it myself." I quietly blocked everyone who'd left nasty comments or messages. My wedding guest list got significantly shorter, but I told myself it was for the best. Only Uncle Mark remained silent throughout the whole ordeal, which I found oddly comforting amid the chaos. The next 2 months were a blur of wedding preparations. Michael was my rock through it all, never questioning my decision to cut off my family, supporting me as I revised seating charts and canceled place settings. Then, one rainy evening, there was a knock at my door. Uncle Mark stood there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "We need to talk." I'd never seen my uncle look so broken. He sat heavily on my couch, hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles were white. "Your post," he began, "about your father's treatment of Chloe, it made me start thinking. Really thinking about everything. And remembering." He told me about the early years of his marriage, how my father was always around their house. He'd drive Sarah home from work, saying it wasn't safe for her to take the bus. This was even before she was pregnant with Chloe. He was always bringing her gifts, expensive ones. I thought, God, I was such a fool. I thought he was just being a generous brother. Uncle Mark's voice cracked. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope with trembling hands. "I had to know. After your post, I just had to know." The DNA test results were printed on official laboratory letterhead. My uncle had collected hair samples from all 3 of them, himself, Chloe, and my father. The results were unequivocal. Uncle Mark's genetic match to Chloe showed only an uncle's relationship, 84%, while my father showed a 99.99% paternal match. "Sarah confessed everything today," he whispered. 25 years. They'd been having an affair for 25 years. Since before Chloe was even conceived. We sat there until well past midnight, piecing together memories that suddenly made horrifying sense. The special treatment, the excessive gifts, the way my father always seemed to know about Chloe's life before anyone else. All those times he'd insisted on driving Aunt Sarah to doctor's appointments when she was pregnant. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," Uncle Mark said as he was leaving. "I should have seen it. Should have known." I watched him walk to his car in the rain, his shoulders hunched with the weight of 2 decades of betrayal. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt no satisfaction in being right. The morning after Uncle Mark's visit changed everything. I was still processing our conversation when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Sophia, your uncle just left. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Rosemary's Cafe in an hour?" I found her already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hands were wrapped around an untouched cup of coffee, and I noticed they were shaking slightly. "I filed for divorce," she said before I could even sit down. "I just came from the lawyer's office." Her voice cracked. 25 years of marriage, and I never knew. Never wanted to know, maybe. Uncle Mark had told her everything, the DNA test results, Aunt Sarah's confession, the decades-long affair. He'd filed for divorce too, unable to stay married to a woman who'd lived such a profound lie. Sophia, Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hands. Her eyes were brimming with tears. I owe you the biggest apology. All these years, I defended him. I sided with him. I watched him favor Chloe and told myself it was nothing. I should have listened to you. Should have seen what was happening in my own home. Mom. No, let me finish. When you posted about your suspicions, I was so angry. I thought you were trying to hurt us, trying to get revenge. But you were the only one brave enough to say what we all should have seen. We spent hours in that cafe, crying, talking, beginning the slow process of healing. Mom ordered a bottle of wine, and we shared it as she told me about all the signs she'd ignored over the years, all the moments that suddenly made terrible sense. Later that evening, I was at home trying to process everything that had happened when someone started pounding on my door. I opened it to find Dad standing there, his face purple with rage. "Are you happy now?" he shouted, pushing past me into my apartment. "You've destroyed everything. 2 families, destroyed because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." "I destroyed nothing," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice was. "You did this. 25 years ago, you made a choice that would destroy these families. I just exposed the truth." His face twisted. "Well, I won't be at your wedding." "How's that for truth?" "I wasn't planning to invite you," I said quietly. "You haven't been a real father to me in years." "Then it's settled," he snarled. "You're no longer my daughter." A strange calm settled over me. "That's fine," I smiled. "You have another daughter anyway, don't you?" The look of shock on his face was almost comical. Before he could respond, I opened the door and gestured for him to leave. When he did, I closed it firmly behind him, leaving him standing in the hallway. That evening, I called Uncle Mark. My hands were trembling slightly as I dialed his number. "Uncle Mark, I have something to ask you." I took a deep breath. "Would you walk me down the aisle at my wedding?" There was a long pause, and I heard him clear his throat several times before he could speak. "Sophia, I would be honored." 2 months passed in a blur of wedding preparations. The guest list was shorter than originally planned, but somehow that made it more special. Every person who attended had chosen truth over comfortable lies, had stood by me when it would have been easier to look the other way. The garden venue was beautiful, scattered with white roses and peonies. Mom sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When Uncle Mark took my arm to walk me down the aisle, I saw tears in his eyes too. The divorce proceedings between my parents moved surprisingly quickly. Mom told me later that Dad agreed to everything just to get it over with, perhaps hoping to minimize the scandal. They settled out of court, and Mom received a $200,000 settlement. I was in my rented apartment, surrounded by wedding thank you cards I was writing, when Mom came to visit one afternoon. "I want you to have this," she said, sliding an envelope across my coffee table. Inside was a check for the full settlement amount. "I don't need this money. What I need is for my daughter to have the home she deserves." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "Consider it compensation for all the years I failed to stand up for you." "You didn't fail." "I did, but we're fixing things now." She smiled. "Besides, what better way to use his money than to finally give you what he should have given you years ago?" I won't pretend I didn't cry when I deposited that check. Or when Michael and I found the perfect apartment, a beautiful 3-bedroom with a balcony and enough space to start the family we're hoping for. Every time I unlock our front door, I feel a sense of justice being served. Dad and Aunt Sarah got married last month. I heard about it through the family grapevine. Apparently, they didn't even wait for the ink to dry on their respective divorce papers. They're not hiding their relationship anymore. Their social media is full of happy couples photos, as if the past 25 years of deception never happened. I don't follow their accounts. I don't need to. Most of our relatives sided with Mom and me once the DNA results became public knowledge. Even those who initially defended Dad couldn't ignore the evidence. Uncle Mark comes over for dinner every Sunday now. He's dating again, tentatively stepping back into life after the betrayal. Mom joins us often, and watching them heal together, sister-in-law and brother-in-law bonded by shared pain, has been beautiful. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Chloe. About the fact that she's technically my half-sister. I wonder if she knew, if she ever suspected the truth behind our father's favoritism. But those thoughts don't keep me awake anymore. I have my own life now, my own home, my own family, built on honesty instead of secrets.